David stood frozen, staring at the giant. Goliath was enormous, his armor shining in the sunlight, and his voice booming like thunder. "Send me your best warrior. If he can fight me and kill me, we'll be your servants. But if I win, you will serve us." Goliath's words echoed across the battlefield, making everyone tremble. No one dared to face him. But then, David, a young shepherd boy, stepped forward. He was about to do something no one believed was possible. Hi, thank you for watching. Please kindly like the post and subscribe to the channel. David was just a boy, the youngest of 8 brothers. He lived in the fields, watching over his father's sheep. While his brothers fought in battles, David stayed behind, tending to the flocks. But he was no stranger to danger. He had protected his sheep from wild animals like lions and bears, using only his sling and his courage. One day, David's father, Jesse, sent him to the battlefield to bring food to his brothers who were fighting the Philistines. When David arrived, he saw the army of Israel standing on one side of a valley and the Philistine army on the other. Between them stood a giant, a man named Goliath. Goliath was a warrior, over 9 feet tall, with armor so heavy it would have been hard for most people to carry. Every day, for 40 days, Goliath came out and shouted insults at the Israelites. He challenged them to send out a warrior to fight him one-on-one. The stakes were high. If Goliath won, the Israelites would become slaves to the Philistines. But if someone from Israel defeated him, the Philistines would serve Israel. David heard Goliath's challenge, and he couldn't believe it. "Who is this man who dares to insult the army of the living God?" David asked. His brothers heard him and scolded him for speaking out. They thought he was just being foolish, but David's heart burned with anger. He couldn't understand why everyone was so afraid. David knew that God was powerful, and if God was on their side, no one could defeat them. He went to King Saul and said, "I will fight this giant. I have fought lions and bears to protect my sheep, and God has helped me. He will help me defeat this giant too." King Saul looked at David, surprised. "You're just a boy," Saul said. "Goliath is a trained warrior. You can't fight him." But David answered, "God saved me from the lions and bears. He will save me from this giant." Seeing how determined David was, King Saul agreed to let him fight. He offered David his own armor, but David refused. It was too big and heavy. David didn't need armor or a sword. All he needed was his faith in God and his sling. David went to a nearby stream and picked up 5 smooth stones. He put them in his pouch and walked toward the battlefield. As he got closer, he could see Goliath standing tall and laughing at him. The giant was confused. "Am I a dog that you come at me with a stick?" Goliath mocked. "Come here, and I'll feed your flesh to the birds and the animals." But David wasn't afraid. He stood tall and said, "You come at me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel. Today, God will give me the victory over you." Goliath was angry, but David didn't back down. He reached into his pouch, took out a stone, and placed it in his sling. He swung it around and let it fly. The stone shot through the air and struck Goliath right in the forehead. The giant's eyes widened, and he staggered backward. With a loud crash, Goliath fell to the ground, lifeless. David ran toward him, took Goliath's sword, and cut off his head. The Philistine army was stunned. They couldn't believe what had just happened. A young boy had defeated their giant warrior. When they saw that Goliath was dead, they turned and ran in fear. The Israelites cheered. They were victorious, thanks to David's courage and faith in God. David didn't care about the fame or glory. He knew that it wasn't his strength that had won the battle, but God's power. When King Saul saw what had happened, he was amazed. He asked, "Whose son is this young man?" David's victory over Goliath changed everything. It wasn't long before David became one of King Saul's most trusted soldiers. People began to sing songs about David, saying, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." This made King Saul jealous. He saw David as a threat to his throne and began to treat him as an enemy. But David continued to serve Saul faithfully, never once seeking revenge. He trusted that God would guide him, even through the challenges that came. The story of David and Goliath became one of the most well-known stories in the Bible. It teaches that even the smallest and weakest person can do great things if they have faith in God. David's victory was not about his size or strength, but about his trust in God's power. David's faith was a reminder to everyone that with God, nothing is impossible. The story of David and Goliath still inspires people today to face their own giants with courage, knowing that God will help them through whatever challenges they face. David's victory over Goliath was just the beginning of his story. He would go on to become king of Israel and do many great things. But no matter how high he rose, David always remembered the lesson he learned that day. When you trust in God, no giant is too big to defeat. The story of David and Goliath is a reminder to all of us that courage and faith can lead to victories that seem impossible. Whether facing a giant or a difficult challenge in life, we can stand strong, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.